Dope.
So, what do we have next, Tim?
Right. So, when people are talking about hacking, I think that a lot of people think about DEF CON. And when people think about DEF CON, I think, one thinks of the dark tangent. So I imagine for most of our viewers, DT, doesn't really need much of an introduction. But, for those that maybe are the uninitiated, he's been organizing DEF CON since the early 90s. He started the Black Hat conference series. And, he's been advisory roles for Department of Homeland Security here in the U.S. and for ICANN and things like that. He's also got all these like little things that he collects up on his resume. Like I'm pretty sure he's given an entire conference talk using only stickers before. So definitely invested in the culture. Right?
If that's not the dream, I don't know what it is.
So we thought, when we're doing something different, we're trying to do something unique, and we're trying to embrace this hackers adapt.
Oh my, are we gonna have a sticker talk?
I don't know. We'll see. With the hackers adapt kind of paradigm here, we're like, who better to introduce and sort of lift us off for the day than DT himself, right? So, at this point, I think everybody that has it, grab their popcorn and sit back. We don't really have breaks built into the day, so this kicks off the stream and live hacking with the Dark Tangent himself.
Oh my God, and he's here! Hi!
Welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Hi.
Hello, everybody.
Oh my God! Hi. Welcome to the stream.
We got cobbled together and cabled up just in time, so I'm pretty excited to actually be connected right now.
Woo!
Yay!
He's the epitome of adapting, right? Hackers adapting as of like 10 minutes ago. So.
I was telling Tim that this is the first time I've actually used my laptop for this. I have like every camera and microphone disabled in BIOS and tape over all the camera. I mean, this laptop is not going to be used for a microphone or a camera. But then I have to present these slides, and so I spent a bit of time untangling it. So it works now. Awesome. So I can actually have slides. I don't have to tell you all to pretend that you're seeing a picture or something. So I'm kind of excited.
We appreciate you relaxing the tight controls and joining us today live.
All right, I am going to bring your slides here. Oh, there they are. Okay. And I'm going to leave the screen.
Yeah, I want to start my timer. I think I've got about 45 minutes. And so if I go short, I'll be happy to entertain questions. And if I go long, too bad. Sorry about that.
We're okay with it.
Say bye, everyone. Let the men shine.
Okay. Ready to go?
Have fun. You got this.
Here we go. All right. Hello. Thank you for having me. Hey, I'm the Dark Tangent, as Tim mentioned, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I really like this layout for this con. And I really like trying to approach an age-old problem of how do you show hacking in a different way. And I like the gamification angle. I like the voting angle. Anyway, I like it all. And that's why I decided to accept Tim's offer to come and speak to you. And so I put together some slides, and I figured this is probably going to be pretty relaxed. So this is not up to like a policy slide deck. This is just going to be hearing a bit of DT's stories and a little bit of me mentally connecting the dots through a couple of themes. So here we go. First off, organizing cons for so long, at some point you start trying to think, well, are people getting anything out of cons at all? What's the point? And you see that there's basically a distinction. There's people who go socially and they get a lot of social networking. There's people that go for content. So at first I was thinking, okay, it's content versus social. And it's all about adjusting the balance to make sure that somebody on each side has something to do. But then I read a little bit and I realized that people essentially learn through three big buckets, three big ways. One is by observing. Like you're the hunter on the Serengeti and you're watching the elder master hunt and you're internalizing the lessons by observing. You can be told, right? You're in a classroom, you're being lectured at, and you're being told something. Hey, don't touch the stove, it's hot, you'll burn your finger. And some people learn by doing, right? They just don't get it. They observe all they want, they're told all they want, don't throw the spear, this way, do it the other way. But once they start actually throwing the spear or touching the burning stove, they figure it out by doing. And if you think about it a little bit, when we spend a lot of our time online, Twitch, YouTube, whatever, you're observing or you're being told. And Twitch is just genius. I don't know how many billions of dollars they've made by having you watch other people play games. It's like, if I was a kid and somebody said you're going to spend hours watching other people play games, I'd tell them to fuck off. It's like, no, I am playing the game. Why am I watching you play the game? That's like your dad taking the controller out of your hands and saying, hey, son, watch me play. That doesn't sound very fun. But it turns out there's a ton of lessons to be learned through observing, especially if it's a game you're interested in and the player is testing out different strategies, right? So it's really valuable. If you look at being told and doing, this might be more like a class you would go to at a conference. You get a training class, you're told something, then you get the virtual machine, you do the lab, you get feedback from the instructor. That's great. So you got these two sort of Venn diagrams going on. And ideally, you would balance it with all three. So if you're trying to organize a con or a training or a university, you want to try to do all three. And for me, I'm much more of a doing person. I don't know why, that's just my learning style. And you'll notice maybe throughout your life, you'll have different learning styles. And so for gaming, I'm really interested to see how it goes today, because I think that observing and being told is really interesting. And then you can potentially take what you've observed and maybe do it yourself. So I'll tell you a little bit of my story about playing games and how I learned a little bit how to learn. Okay, so here we go. Back in 1982, Microsoft released Flight Simulator 1.0, PC DOS. I used PC DOS, other people used MS-DOS. I'm not judging, just saying PC DOS was better. And so here I am, first day of high school. I'm in a new town, know nobody. I get on the school bus. I'm a total nerd. And I had just read PC World magazine. And in PC World magazine, there was an article about this guy who played Microsoft Flight Simulator, found all these bugs in it, and was really upset that he found all these bugs. Teenager. So he calls Microsoft and he asks for Bill Gates. And back then, Bill Gates' secretary didn't know that Bill didn't have any kids, thought it was Bill's son, puts the call through to Bill. And so this kid talks to Bill Gates and explains to him all the problems in Flight Simulator and doesn't realize that he shouldn't be talking to Bill. Bill says, sounds great, sounds like you've found a lot of things. Why don't you come and test some software for us? And so this kid gets a job working at Microsoft. And I'm telling this story I just read to the kid sitting next to me on the bus. And he says, yeah, I'm Bob Friedman. That was me. And so I meet Bob. And Bob tested Flight Simulator, and he also tested for Microsoft this software called Microsoft Pencil. And he found so many bugs in Microsoft Pencil, they scrapped the product, started fresh, and they called it Microsoft Office, or it was Microsoft Word. Pencil became. And because of that, he also ended up getting jobs testing games for Infocom. So he had every game, Zork 1, 2, 3, whatever. He had every game before anybody else, and he tested them. And I'd go to his house, and I'd watch Bob play Infocom games. And he taught me a lot about choices. Like, it would take me a week or two to solve an Infocom game. It would take Bob a day to a day and a half. And I'm thinking, I'm typing just as many characters potentially as he is. What is he doing so differently than me? And he just knew the choices. He innately understood in any given situation what his choices were. And so by watching him, not playing, by watching him though, it was super awesome. Also, one of my first games on the PC was called I think it was IBM Adventure. And that's where I learned to program or hack on Advanced Basic. And of course, that's so I could get more arrows and move faster and slay the dragon better. And then That, of course, led into wanting to hack the games, right? You want more arrows. You've already solved the game, you want to go back and max everything out, but you don't want to spend all the time having to replay everything. So you start cheating. And so some of the earlier games I cheated at, and what I learned along the way was Ultima and Zork, different kind of games. Ultima, my trick was, as you died, the floppy drives, it would think about you dying, and then the floppy drives would kick on, and it would write that you had died or whatever, and kick you back to your last save part. But if you were fast enough and you popped open that 5¼ inch floppy drive bay, it could not write the data. The screen told you that you were dead. The data had not been committed to disk yet. And if you popped open that disk, you didn't die, right? You could open the disk, data wouldn't be written, you could restart the game, and it would put you right back to where you were. Yay. And then the next one, on Zork, of course, you could, I learned how to hex edit saved game files. And how did you do this? Well, remember Norton Utilities. Version 1 came out in 1982. Perfect timing for me. And I've highlighted it down there, sec mod. Easily change floppy disks. So this was basically a hex editor. And you would hex edit sectors on the floppy disk. And you would figure out where your number of lives were or whatever and edit it. Awesome. Then the legendary soft ice. Right? This is when now you're trying to figure out either copy protection or you're trying to get around certain parts in the game. And this was years later, Greg Hoagland famously coined the term nop sled, right? When you nop out a whole bunch of this stuff. Back when I was learning to do it, I was using a lot of nops, but I didn't call it a nop sled. But in playing games and wanting to understand them more, what was going on behind them and hack them, I started to turn myself more into a hacker. I didn't identify as a hacker back then. I was probably more of a phone freaker. I hadn't met any real hackers by then. But thanks to games, it got me closer. And what I understood talking to other people or adults, when you tried to explain to them what you were doing, is that people essentially fear what they don't understand. And you could say this about anything, right? But it seems to be particularly strong, or historically has been particularly strong around hackers. And you could see this in the early 90s, 2000s, when just hysterical headlines were being written. You know, hackers can walk on air. They're invisible. Well, maybe on your network, but not in real life. And so I've been thinking about, over the years, what it is about that. Because to me, hacking is really a combination of curiosity and skills. And when I hone in on that curiosity bit, that seems to be the distinction between people who are into this kind of creatively, and there's some people who do it like professionally. And so think about the people you know who are professionally creative. They have to get up in the morning and they have to create. Maybe they're in an ad agency or something. And then think about the people who only create when they want to. They have a brainstorm, they go and they draw something. They have a brainstorm, they write a new program. It's kind of two different ways of approaching hacking, professionally or creatively. And when the dot-com boom happened and there's a giant split that occurred in the hacking community, it pretty much came right down those lines. Those who said everybody who had a day job professionally hacking, they were sellouts, InfoSec sellouts. There's a whole movement against them to dox them. And then the other ones were more, what I would say, inspirational. They're not professional. They don't have to produce on a deadline and write a report. So how do I know this? Well, one of the things I learned from this famous 1995 movie is that curiosity is the crime. Right? It will lead you down all these rabbit holes. And if you're not careful, you might get in trouble for it. And we're going to talk about this movie later because it's near and dear to my heart. Now, if you start looking to see, well, okay, where does the term hackers sort of originate from? This is the first reference I could find. It's from a 1963 MIT, Cambridge, Massachusetts newspaper. And what was going on here if you read it, is they were telephone freakers, yay, but they were called hackers, who were placing free long-distance calls, and they'd figured out and mapped the campus phone network, and they'd found a way to place a connection that would not get metered. So, free phone call. And so if you read about it on the right, there's the administrator who's chasing these hackers around, trying to stop them because he doesn't want them to get in trouble with the phone company. He doesn't want them to go to jail. So right here, 1963, we have the good guy system administrator trying to protect his system against the prankster hackers because he doesn't want to see them get in trouble. Really classic. And there's some further bit of this article, quote, there was a club where a lot of the computer users would hang out. And this is the quote of someone. I remember each of them shouting hacker in the club room whenever someone did something questionable. And they were particularly quick to shout it at each other, often for no reason, right? So shenanigans right at the beginning, lots of pranks. Totally love it. So this is what I identify with. Right? When I hear about pranks, this is what I'm thinking of. I'm not thinking of hackers as criminals. I'm thinking of this mindset. So when I use that term hacker, I'm using curiosity and skills, and so that means it can be used for good, it can be used for evil. It's just an adjective. It describes to me that combination. I don't say criminal plumber. I don't say, criminal accountant. I say accountant. It's just the way it is. And I want to make this distinction that hacking is not InfoSec. And at DEF CON, we've been trying to highlight this more and more over the past, 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years. And the point here is not that InfoSec is bad and hacking is better, or vice versa. It's just they're different. And we should stop treating them as the same, because they're not. And for me, hacking is much more about spontaneous discovery, just picking something and exploring it for the hell of it. There's no necessary return. It doesn't necessarily advance your career. You don't necessarily get community recognition. You're just doing it because it's fun and interesting. With InfoSec, I think it's much more outcome driven. It's much more career oriented. You're trying to develop maybe more skills, trying to defend against bad guys. You might have more real world impact on doing InfoSec, but I think you probably have more enjoyment hacking. And I think the two are sort of in balance. If you do all your life as InfoSec and you never get to do any real hacking, you're going to be a very sad person. So, where did I get some of these ideas? Well, Stephen Levy, this is, these next couple of books you're going to see, I pulled these off my bookshelf. This is my book from the bookshelf, and it's really super beaten up. 1984, Stephen Levy wrote this book, Hackers, Heroes of the Computer Revolution. And in it, he has a description of these hacker ethics. And take a minute and look at some of these ethics. And tell me how close, or comment on Discord or wherever, how close you think that aligns with the historical notion of hacking and maybe how it would align today, right? Access to computers, the hands-on imperative. You have to get hands-on. I mean, why did I hack in the early days? It was to get access to systems so I could learn and read man pages, right? All information should be free. Now, I'm sure there's probably a caveat, because I can tell you for sure my information does not want to be free. But information about the computer network, that definitely wanted to be free. I like to mistrust authority, promote decentralization, judged by your hacking, not criteria such as degree, age, race, or position, right? There's your anti-InfoSec part right there. You're judged by your hacking. And I love this next one. You can create art and beauty on a computer. It's not necessarily just a business tool with a business end. And they can change your life for the better. Computers have changed my life for the better. I hope they change yours. Okay. Now, since we're pulling some books off my bookshelf, here's one for you. John Runner, The Shockwave Rider, 1975. Let me see, what do we have back here? We have 1984. Okay, 1975. John coins the phrase worm, computer worm. This is where the term comes from. The Morris worm, somebody read Shockwave Rider when they were writing about the Morris worm. So you should go back and read about it. Nikki Halfiger had lived a score of lifetimes, but technically he didn't exist. He was a fugitive from Tarnover, the high-powered government think tank that had educated him. First, he had broken his identity code. Then he escaped. It's a really good book. Next up, we've got this classic, William Gibson, Burning Chrome, 1982. This is where we get the term cyberspace. So since we're probably going to use that word sooner or later, I figure I better anchor you with where does it come from? And now when I start thinking about games, in 1977, so well before the William Gibson or even the Worm, Orson Scott Card wrote a short story called Ender's Game. And later on, like less than 10 years later, he wrote a book by the same name, but much longer. And in the book, there's Ender Wiggins. He thinks he's playing a game, but in reality, he's ending up really saving the world, right? The game he is playing, he believes is a game. In reality, it's not. He's remotely piloting these spacecraft and saving the world. This is a theme that we see again and again. Remember this one? The Last Starfighter. Oh my gosh. So this came out in 1984. And same thing. Alex Rogan plays a game, The Last Starfighter. He beats the game. He's the first person to beat the game. And lo and behold, it's secretly a recruitment device. And those who can defeat the game get recruited to go off and beat up the space baddies. So there's this kind of theme that's been developing in the early 80s there. Atari went to make a game, and I was going to have these great screenshots about this game. I never played it, and I realized why. The game was never made. It got aborted halfway through, and never was done. It was released later on as, like, I think Skyfox 2. It's a different kind of game. Okay, here we go. Another game. Here we go. Most classic line of a hacking movie ever. Shall we play a game? Of course, I'm talking about War Games, right? 1983. And for me, this movie got me into hacking, really. I really wanted to hack. I wanted to go auto-dial modems all over California. I wanted to map every NPA and area code I could find. The interesting things about this is it was technically very accurate. And years later, I met this guy at the first DEF CON, super talented hacker. And we got to talking, we became friends years later. And we were telling our war game stories. And my story, of course, was, man, I love that movie. It got me interested in war dialing. And his story was, I hated that movie because it told the world about war dialing. And that's what I was using to break into everything. Then he turned it on its head. And what he did, he lived in Seattle. And I think he was the first person ever prosecuted under a Computer Crime Act in the state of Washington. He set up a bulletin board system, and it basically said, hey, if you've auto-dialed, if you've war-dialed me and you found the screen, you're somebody that's interesting, I want to talk to you, please enter your information or chat with me here. And he used war dialing as a way to try to meet other interesting people. Super fascinating. And now we're up to 1995. Crime, is there curiosity? Hackers. Now, there's a couple of things here I want to tell you about. One is this movie was defaced, and it was the very first website ever defaced. Apparently, before this movie, before this website, websites had not been defaced. So that was a big innovation. So what happened here is there was a game that they made, MGM Studios, who produced the movie, had an online game, sort of like an Easter egg hunt and a challenge. And the idea was that you would run around and quote unquote solve these game puzzles problems. And you would hack your way through these stages. And you too could be a hacker, and you would, I don't know what you would get at the end of the pathway, but it was on the lead up to launching the movie. And this was part of the promotion. So that sounds really time consuming, doesn't it? Going through all their little channels that they want you to go through. Why would you play by their rules if you didn't have to? So some hackers broke in, didn't play by the rules, defaced the website, got all the data that they wanted, solved the puzzle, did all of that. And so here we are, first defaced website. And MGM, or the studio, releases this this press announcement and has and leaves up the defaced web page. Leaves it up during on the promotional site for the movie. You can see they changed the wording, right? This is going to be a lame, cheesy promotional site for a movie. And the studio maintained the site during the theatrical run of the movie in the altered form. It's crazy. So I got this from Wikipedia. It says the website for hackers soon afterward was allegedly hacked. And I'm here today to tell you it's not allegedly hacked. It was definitely hacked. And rumor has it that don't NFS mount export your root file systems read-write, because you might become the first defaced website. I'm just saying. And so you can see how hackers get a challenge like this and they want to win. Hacking contests, hacking cons, love building games. There's all kinds of games. Here's a picture of a lock-picking contest that we did at the Tribeca Film Festival years ago. And there's a timer, and there are these different stages, and you would go through, and it would count the time it takes for you to do each step, and then the person with the lowest time would win. There's been variations on this game. There's this other one called the Bomb Box. It started a long time ago at DEF CON Tampa Revenant Village. And the idea was that there was this unknown box, and you had to basically defuse the bomb. And everything was sort of tamper resistant. And so there's a million ways that it would go off and it would buzz at you. And if you go and look at the old videos on YouTube, you can watch some winning runs where these teams had played forever, like all day. They mapped out every little trick that you needed to get past every stage. They died like 1,000 times, like a Tom Cruise movie. And in the end, they did the speed run where they got it perfect, right? This tickles all of the hacker buttons, right? Physical hacking, electronic, I love it. And you can see by a list, last time we did a DEF CON in person, DEF CON 27, here's a list of the games that we knew about, contests. And people love games. I love to hack. And putting it in a sort of controlled environment, putting some parameters around it, you can explore and do things in a safe way you've never done before. And if you screw up, who cares? It's a learning experience, right? It's not like you're doing this for your job. And so I would really encourage you, at whatever con you visit, check out some of the games and contests. Some contests are really quick, half an hour. Some might last the entire weekend. So just figure it out, make your schedule, and I bet you're gonna have a great time. This is essentially what you're doing here, and why we promote a lot of the contests, is we're trying to fork you into smaller and smaller groups. So this is my social engineering going on here. You come to a show, there's 30,000 people. Then you go to the contest area and there's 5,000 people. Then you go to a contest area and there's 500 people. And then you join some teams and now there's 6 or 8 or 10. And now you're in a small enough group that you can talk to people, make new friends, and then move on to do the next thing, right? We're trying to get you in affinity groups and hanging out. Now, I like to talk a little bit about motivation I see on some of the groups in the hacking space. So normally I tell people, hey, listen, hackers aren't so interested in secrets. Nation states want secrets. They want to understand, is Russia violating some treaty? Is some company in France stealing secrets from Boeing? Are they doing something they shouldn't be doing? Right? They want secrets, classical traditional spying. And organized criminals, they want money. They need something that's fungible, that they can monetize easily for the most amount of cash for the least amount of risk, right? And if you think about it, nation states have printing presses and can print money, and organized criminals aren't so interested in secrets because they're hard to monetize. They're kind of almost mutually exclusive a little bit. And protesters want attention. So you could think of this as anything. It could be Greenpeace, wanting to draw attention to whaling, whatever it is, they're trying to draw your attention to their cause, anonymous, whatever it is. But hackers and researchers, near and dear to my heart, are seeking knowledge. That's primarily the motivation. How does this technology work? What can I make the technology do next that it was not intended to do? Right? They're not necessarily motivated by money. Maybe that's their infosec side of their head. But on the hacking / academic researcher side, it's pretty much knowledge. That's the thing. And so I say that hackers and researchers in society are essentially the ones that are leading the way. It's not people and companies so much. They're constrained by NDAs and what they can do. It's not government so much. And so I've got a couple funny pictures here. Here's some hackers at a very early DEF CON. I think it was maybe 3. And yes, those are some cups. And there's an acoustic 300 baud modem somewhere in there. And they're trying to run StringNet. They're running a 300 baud modem over cups and string. Why? because why not? Can you do it? And that's the kind of shit that hackers do, right? That's fun. You know, here's Jason Street. Look at his, he's got more stuff on his wrist. This is when he started to learn how to solder and hack on some hardware. And here's a picture of the original portable laptop, right? This is the Libretto, I think 100, the smallest, coolest little laptop you could have. It's hooked up to a tape recorder, an Oki 900, and a Radio Shack scanner, and the C-Tech Cellular Telephone Experimenter's Toolkit. And what it would do is it would allow you to reaction tune to cell phone calls and listen in and intercept analog voice calls. And that's the C-Tech kit, was to experiment with understanding how cellular worked. You didn't have to have fake base stations. You would essentially do this. Here's a guy that did a satellite essential base station. And in his website, he's talking about how with this setup, see, look at what's on his satellite dish there. It's like an upside down plastic mug or something. He said he could monitor unencrypted satellite calls at about a quarter of the planet with this. He could just kind of point it in an area and start getting voice calls. It's awesome. Who knew? This next example, this is classic academic hacking, right? These students, I believe in Atlanta, they were like, I wonder if we take a high-powered camera and we take a picture of somebody's keys on this table at this cafe from the window of the lab, can we regenerate the keys and open a lock? Well, if you think about it, keys are a known quantity, right? The bit depth of each key is known. The dimensions of the key are known, so you can unwarp a picture of the key based on what you know the key looks like. So that's what they did. They took a picture of the keys, they could unwarp it, they could put it into this riprap, they could 3D print a key, and you could put the key in the lock, and the lock works. See, that is awesome. And it turns out that people took this idea and they made machines where you would put your key in, and it would take a picture of your key, and it would print out a new key. And then there's another service where you can hold your key up to your webcam, and they'll take a picture of your key online, and they'll produce keys for you, and they'll mail them to you in the mail, right? This little hack turned potentially into a whole business line for people. So imagine what happens when this article gets published in the newspaper, right? Somebody shows you all the keys that open all the TSA locks. Even worse was this one. They posted in a New York paper this key that was the master key for New York City. That didn't last very long, right? Then we got this guy. I'm sure you know Matt Blaze. In my mind, he is a quintessential hacker, academic hacker. Matt's father was a locksmith, and locksmiths have all these secrets. Not allowed to share. And if you're not in the club, you're out. And blah, blah, blah. Matt did not like that. So he learned all the locksmithing stuff he could, and then he talked about it. And then he wrote about it. And a lot of that hidden sacred knowledge is now just part of the background of anybody wanting to study physical security and locks. And so this is from a paper he wrote, kind of stepping through how he approached defeating this combination lock. So this was essentially what he was trying to defeat. This is the inside of the combination lock. And you can see the different physical components. And he identified that there are these different modes based on physical feedback when you rotated the disc pack. And so he identified a high wheel pack, a low wheel pack, in a center position, a left contact position, or a right contact position. Knowing these sort of three states the lock could be in, he graphed it. He just took out some graph paper and defeated the lock. All right? Super awesome. Yay, hackers. And now we all learn from it. We all know how to defeat the locks, and we're better informed when we go and buy things, right? So this is why I say hackers and researchers lead the way. We're discovering new classes of vulnerabilities, exposing poor product security. Those satellite phone makers said their phones were secure. Not, right? Sergeant Greenleaf will say they have a super high security lock, unless you have a pad of graph paper and a pencil, right? And what we're doing is we're also spurring public debate. And this is that whole part about people fearing what they don't understand. So when we have this public debate, we have to be very careful in how we couch it, because we don't need fear-mongering. We need to advance the state security, because even though hackers love breaking stuff, we get bored breaking the same stuff over and over. It would be nice for them to fix it at some point so we could move on to something new. And you'll notice that criminals and governments don't do this. It's not in their interests. Criminals are not going to tell you how they're breaking in. Governments are not going to tell you how they're breaking in, or when they fix something behind the scenes. Manufacturers aren't going to tell you how they've silently fixed for problems and what the underlying issues were, so we can't learn from their internal development. And it turns out that you better understand your risks, the better informed your decisions will be. You can think of this in sort of a gaming way. Once you understand how the game works, you have better information, you can make better informed decisions. Right? Your strategies are now fully informed. You're always trying to make an optimal decision. But until you understand how the game fully works, you can't make informed decisions. The other thing this does is it produces better policy outcomes. This is a little boring to say, but what's going on here is there's people who say this is possible or not possible, and then there's practical. And so if you think about it, like, hackers are all about practical. It's like, I'm going to get out my torch and I'm going to see if I can melt this chain. And so I think of it as the applied versus theoretical. And one is, how does the system really work? That's the hacker way. Okay, yeah, you told me, but now I'm going to see, does it really work that way? Versus what you're told, satellite phone manufacturer. Okay. And the other part that's so fascinating is you're not afraid to be wrong. Hackers and researchers get excited when they're wrong. They're not afraid to fail. And you can see this in gaming too. The people who aren't afraid to take a risk and lose their character or whatever, they game over and over again, but they don't really take it personally when they die or their technique fails. To them, it's like, oh, interesting. Okay, now I learned that the trap door is there. It's the continuously learning mindset. And that's why I think there's some people that are more innately predisposed for hacking than others. Some people are better engineers. Some people get up in the morning better than I do. But I think that if it weren't for computers, the same types of people would exist, and they would be doing something different. They'd be inventing a better internal combustion engine. They'd be tinkering with steam engines back in the day. Right now, maybe they're working on space or biotech. But this mindset, this creative mindset, has to be identified, and we have to make it safe to experiment with, and we have to foster it, because that's our innovation. So I'm going to leave you with some thoughts. Hacking is going to happen. So you may as well foster the good kind of hacking, legally, financially, culturally, whatever it is. We should identify it's happening. More power to us. Let's get this going. Let's not have it be something that's hidden or stigmatized over. And you can see this evolve over the last decade or so. More laws allow legal hacking. So we saw this for the voting machine hacking village. There was an exemption to the DMCA where you could hack electronic voting machines or election infrastructure because it was viewed to be in the public benefit. There's an exemption. That's great. We see some exemptions for medical. There's probably going to be some exemptions for automotive, aviation. You see a whole new class, right? Bug bounties. You can get paid hacking now. There's another outlet, financially rewarding. Maybe not for people in the United States, because the bounties might be low compared to the American dollar. But I can tell you, I'm in Singapore right now, in Southeast Asia. American dollars are worth a lot in Thailand or India, and you can make a good living in some of the other countries of the world. And then also you see these cyber competitions, right? Then NCCDC and others, where you're trying to identify and foster hackers, right? You, instead of breaking in and stealing stuff from your neighbor, why don't you break into the simulated environment? You might get the same thrill and you might get some competition. And now we've identified you that you might be worthy of a scholarship. It's fantastic. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this conference, is I'm hoping that you've identified a new way, something new to add to this list. It's not a con, it's not a CTF, it's not really a challenge, it's not a hackerspace, it's something different. And I really hope it takes off, because I would like to learn looking over the shoulder of Joe Grant or Chris Eagle or one of these experts. And I like that gamification. So I'm wishing everybody today best of luck. And I hope it really turns out well. And with that, thank you. And I think I might have some time for questions and answers. So thanks for having me, Colonel Kong.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I think we do have time for, let me just double check if we have time for a question. One question. We can do one question. No one's gonna die.
No. Hey, look at my countdown timer. I've got 5 minutes and 22 seconds.
5 whole minutes. That's like 2 questions. That's like 2 good questions. Y'all, if you have any questions, let us know. Here the staff will gather also questions from the Discord server. So if you have any questions there on the Discord server, the staff will pick it up and bring it to us. I think we do have a nice question. I am also curious. It is a very general question, but that should be fun. What is your favorite hack?
My favorite hack. So to me, there's different kinds of hacks, and I think some hacks are just so over the top, like you're kidding, right? And I think one of the Kevin Mitnick hacks back in the day, at the early dawn of hacking, where they got, I think it was Sonos tapes, and they backdoored a Sonos tape and they put it in a FedEx envelope and they tried to ship it to a company posing as a Sonos update, because that's how they shipped updates in the back. And they were trying to physically get somebody to run an update. In the end, I don't think it worked. Something else happened and the tape never got loaded. And years later, I think Mitnick and the administrator met each other. It was super crazy. But those kinds of courageous, over-the-top attacks, those always kind of inspire me, because I find that you're sort of limited by your imagination. And so he's like, well, I can't break in, but I know this guy always applies updates, so I'll just give him an update to apply.
I love it. I am 100% there with you. I am a break and entering hacker, so yeah. I do like that thrill. We also have another question here from Magno. Let me just get that back from the chat. There we go. What would you recommend for this new generation that's just starting?
Yeah, so good question. I could talk for hours on this. One is just learn some offense. And the reason I say that is if you're going to do any defense, you need to understand offense a little bit. And a lot of universities are emotionally not prepared to teach offense. And the story I tell here is I was in Washington, D.C. area, and I was at this meeting, and there was somebody there from a giant university in either Maryland or Virginia, I won't say who. And they said in the next 5 years, they want to be in the top 10 cyber. And in the next 10 years, they want to be in the top 5. And so their question was around what do they need to do to really compete? And I said, that's fantastic. How are you going to teach offense? And I'm not kidding you. The guy's face was like this. Okay, maybe not top 10. Okay, that's very honest. I applaud your honesty. But you could see in his brain, he's thinking regents, the provost, like who's okay, we're never going to have it approved. And so it tells you that offense is really important. And the other thing I would say is, in my day, being a generalist was really important. I understood a little bit about everything. I could keep in my head how the whole systems work. Can't do that anymore. I'm completely lost. Everything is so fragmented. You need 100 people in a room to explain to you what's going on with some obfuscated JavaScript. So you need to specialize. And what's been happening is people specialize to make a name for themselves, and they're constantly looking for greenfield. Oh, I'm the aviation hacker. I'm the satellite hacker. I'm the car hacker. I'm whatever it is. And they make a name for themselves, and they're constantly looking for greenfield. So I'm not saying don't do that, but just be aware what you do now was going to change 10 more times in your career. So I think if you have a solid understanding of networking fundamentals, how do networks work? How does cloud work? Right? And then you layer on defense and offense, you're going to be in a much better position than someone who's just doing one thing, because you're going to want the flexibility to move around potentially in your career. And that's the other thing is when you do your interviews and you are talking to people, one of my red flags is always, if somebody always is telling me that they know the answer, it's funny that the more they tell me they know the answer, the less I believe them. Because I know how complicated it is. And if I don't hear somebody say, you know what, I don't know, but I'm going to look it up, you get points for that. But if everybody's all confidence, then that's usually a warning flag to me that that's not probably a good team. And remember, hacking nowadays is mostly a team sport. You have to get along well with other teams. It's too complicated to totally lone star too much. So that's my general sort of career advice.
Amazing. That's pretty much it. We also have our last question, and the last question is any insights about why and how DEF CON is adapting this year from e-security?
Because of COVID, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, we've made some announcements. We don't know if we're doing it in person yet or not. We're planning for in person, but it's one of those things like you can't plan a month before the con. You have to plan now. And then what's going to happen is if things look really terrible in June, we might have to pull the plug. But I don't have a crystal ball. So it's really terrible because everybody has to plan twice. So I can tell you for sure, yes, it's definitely happening. I can't tell you if it's all on Discord, Discord virtual, Discord and in person, but one way or the other, it's happening. And the things we're trying to change this year is, we learned a lot from last year, is we're going to make all of our talks pre-recorded that we can. So no matter what, we can release all the content to everybody. And if you can't get in the United States for the in-person, doesn't matter, you can watch all the content, right? It's awesome, do it on your own schedule, and then frees you up to maybe play the games and do the more social. You don't feel that you have to sacrifice the social interaction for the content, like I was mentioning earlier, because you can do the content at any time. So that's our way we're trying to balance the two. And then hopefully never have to do this again. Because it is...
And never. Oh, yes. We cannot have any more online things if we don't actually really desperately need it.
It's funny because when it started, it was novel and everybody was willing to take the hit and learn. And after a year or so, people are like,
we got it. We know it. Yeah, we
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Also, I think DEF CON CTF qualifier starts in like 8 hours or so.
We've got
is it
this
right?
weekend, DEF CON CTF is kicking off on our Discord. And then also on Sunday noon Pacific time, we're having a memorial for Dan Kaminsky. So if you knew him, want to learn about him, whatever, come to our Discord. And we're going to be playing YouTube videos of his. People are going to be telling stories, hanging out, having a drink, whatever. But both are happening on our Discord this weekend. Oh, and also, every week we have a movie night, somewhat technology related, every weekend, every Saturday, I think, 10 o'clock it might be, Pacific time. Come and hang out with a whole bunch of hackers and watch geeky movies and do your best Mystery Science 3000 imitation.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me.
That is it. Thank you so much, Jeff. We're going to probably move on. And again, thank you so much. All right. So we probably going to have a quick video now. And I'm going to...